Hi, and welcome to Career Plug. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Also, please like and comment. Over here, we are punching up in terms of our guests. I'm calling on personal relationships and friends. That's how I'm punching up. So I really feel like I'm bringing significant value. Please, again, like, subscribe, comment as we bring more content your way. Today, I have a special guest, Caprice Bent, and I want to give her a proper introduction. So I'm going to read just a bit of her bio. Caprice Bent is Vice President, Divisional Merchandise Manager, Cosmetics and Lingerie, for those that pronounce that better, at Ross Stores. She's a tenured fashion and merchandising executive with over 30 years of experience. She's served as vice president, divisional merchandise manager for Ross Stores since 2017. She directs a team of buyers across all categories of handbags, fashion, accessories, and travel, strategizing growth initiatives, collaborating with vendors on new product launches, and managing all financial and profit responsibilities. That was a handful and mouthful, but I want to thank her for joining us on Career Plug today. Hi, Caprice.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I had to reiterate that, look, I'm calling on all these personal relationships because I think it's really important for people to see careers that exist outside of the box, if you will. The box is typically law, medicine, engineering. Maybe we throw finance and architecture in there. Those are great careers. You are married to a lawyer who I know.
Yeah.
So, but I think what's interesting are the number of careers that exist outside. And if you don't know, like, how do you go if you don't know, right? Um, so let's start with sort of just, yeah, real easy. Like, what are you plugged into these days? Give me a little bit of what you're doing. I know you're always shaking and moving. You and the hubby stay on the move. But what
Yeah.
specifically are you plugged into these days?
Well, obviously with what I do, I'm always plugged into whatever's going on in the fashion and the retail sector. So that is like just like a baseline. I'm always like, trying to figure out what's the hot new thing and making sure I'm in the right places at the right time to identify those trends. But for me personally, I would say what I'm really plugged into right now is fitness and family. Fitness, family, and
Okay,
friends, I would say. And what that looks
there
like
we
for
go.
me is, back in the day, I worked out really just to look a certain way, and it was just like to keep things right and tight and whatever. Now I find as I've gotten older, a higher stress level takes a lot more to get, the results you want. I'm really plugged into fitness as a lifestyle choice and really looking at it through a different lens of I work out and I stay active really for mind, body, soul. And just, if there's other added benefits, great. But if it just means I'm not a crazy person when I go to work every day, great, kind of thing. So that's one thing. And then I would say family and friends. And the reason I put that in there is because I think I'm at a point in my life and my career where moments with people that matter really matter, and as I've gotten older, my parents are older, friends, family, all of that, I see an additional, I guess, importance around making sure those moments, that I'm there and I'm present and I'm making time for them. And it might be traveling, it might be hanging out. I just spent time for my nephew's birthday, but really making sure that I'm, plugging into the things that matter. And for me right now, that's fitness, family, and friends.
I love that. And while I certainly miss LA, having been there, and our entire sort of fam bam
Mm-hmm.
over a 15-year period, like that's no small,
Yeah,
small amount of time that we built a number of relationships. I am grateful to be home in St. Louis around, family and kind of plugging back into that after being
mhm,
away for something like 22 years total. Um,
absolutely.
so yes, the three F's are important. Um, and yeah, certainly like just miss you guys out there. So anyway, um, I know a little bit about, your background and schooling, but would rather you kind of give us a brief snippet of, like, you're born and raised in LA, but talk a little
Mhm.
bit more about, maybe places you've lived, where you went to college, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. I like to say my friends and I that I grew up with, we say we're unicorns because no one's from here. Everyone, like transplanted here. So, those of us who are from here, kind of have a special place in all of our hearts because we feel like we're unique. But born and raised here, I grew up in Gardena, went to school, public school, LAUSD, shout out, um, the whole time. And really just had a great experience growing up in Los Angeles. Ended up going to UCLA. It was a little bit of a departure from my original plan. My original plan was I wanted to be the next Debbie Allen. So I studied dance for many years, my whole childhood.
Mm-hmm.
But quickly realized that dancing as a career wasn't really for me. Like the lifestyle that went along with it
Mm-hmm.
didn't really click for me. So after I deferred school for about a year to dance and do some different things in that world, went to UCLA. I'm from a UCLA family. My uncle went to UCLA. My sister went to UCLA. My cousins went to UCLA. We were very much kind of plugged into UCLA. Went there and ended up majoring in English and African American theater. And it was one of those things where it was my plan to be a teacher. That was what my
Wow.
my mother did. Once I kind of decided I wasn't going to do the dance thing, I was like, well, I'll just be a teacher. That's noble profession. It's the family business, if you will. And interestingly enough, it was my mother who was a teacher and a counselor and retired from that, who said to me, you know what? Because I worked all through school. Back then you could work and go to school full time. It wasn't as
Correct.
ridiculously expensive as it is now. And so I worked part time my whole entire career at UCLA. And so I had a lot of business background. I managed a hotel. I was the campus manager for the dorms. Like I had all this kind of interesting work experience. And my mom was like, you know what? When I was coming up, there weren't a lot of options, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. All I could really be was a teacher. No one was really, giving me the opportunities to do something else. But you have a different opportunity. You could go work in business. You could go do something with all this work experience you have. If it doesn't work out, come be a teacher, but, go do something more because you can. Because I didn't have those opportunities as a Black woman in Los Angeles at that time. So I took her
Mm-hmm.
advice and went to the Career Center, found out I was graduating a quarter early. So I was really not prepared. And there was only two companies interviewing. There was a nuts and bolts company, and there was at the time Robinson's May, which was a subsidiary of May Company, obviously a major retailer at the time. So I interviewed with the nuts and bolts company. I honestly didn't even know what they did. I just knew they had great benefits and it sounded interesting. And halfway through the interview, the guy said, "Do you even know what we do?" And I was like, "Not really." And he said, "This
Wow.
is not for you. This is not where you want to be. But what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to convert this to a trial interview for you. So you're not going to get this job, but I'm going to help you get the next job." And that's what he did. We talked through, he gave me some tips on how to answer questions, things to think about, ask about. And as a result of that, I went to the next interview for Rob May, ended up getting the job after 5 interviews, and entered their executive training program at that time. And that was kind of, the beginning of I guess the end, because I've now been doing this for over 30 years.
Thank you for that. That is huge. I mean, so going back to, friends, family, fitness, we see the Michelle O's, right? So, but what I didn't know is that you had such an extensive dancer sort of training and background. So that is an interesting fact for me.
Yeah.
And then shout out to your family. Look, there aren't many families who have a number of people that have gone to college,
Mhm.
especially a UCLA caliber. When we see legacies and folks that have gone to colleges, the great thing about that is, in the South or East Coast, it's going to be your HBCUs, right? So I don't know of many, sort of like legacy families, especially going to like a UCLA, but that's great. Um, and so after that, sort of getting back to the end of that interview, did you think about, okay, let me just go ahead and I mean, they took you through 5 interviews. I thought that was something that, maybe started like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, but apparently they've been doing
Yeah.
that for a while, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
did you at all think like, well, let me take some more time to figure out, because I don't even know kind of exactly outside of teaching like what's available to me.
Yeah. You know, I what was interesting about that time was that I was very interested in a non-traditional career. Like once I decided I wasn't going to be a teacher, I was just interested in something that sounded unique and different. So to your point, I wasn't going to be a doctor, I wasn't going to be a lawyer, I wasn't interested in a traditional business role. And what retail or merchandising brought was this interesting combination of analytical and creative. So I was
Okay.
analytical enough, like I could add, and I actually was very good at math, which was funny because I hated math, but I was actually very good at math. And then I also had this creative side that obviously came through the dancing and the minor in theater and stuff. So this career gave me an opportunity to mush both of those together. So that sounded interesting. The other thing that was very interesting to me at the time is that they put you through an executive training program. So kind of came in with, I almost call it like a pledge class, if you will, of 20 other, entry level people out of college. And we went through 10 weeks of training to become buyers. So 4 days a week you were in an office. The fifth day you were in a classroom setting. So it felt like the perfect kind of segue to like adulting, if you will. It's like I got 10 weeks to
Hmm.
get it together before I really got to do the thing. So those two things together just made it feel like a really good option for me. And then also, my mom was like, if you hate it, you can always be a teacher, which sounds like a fallback plan. And I hate to make it sound like, oh, just go be a teacher. Cause I mean, we all know these teachers that, make the hugest difference in students' lives. But at that time, I felt like that was a fallback. Obviously, it was the family business. I knew I'd be able to plug into that if I needed to. So it didn't feel like a huge risk. Um, Nothing else seemed interesting. And quite frankly, I was graduating. And
Yeah.
it wasn't an option to move. I feel like now there's so many more options. Like, oh, you can move home. You can once I was out, it was like once I was out, I was out. It was like it's time to be a grown up, and this is
Yeah.
the job in front of me. They were paying me. I hate to admit it, but they were paying me $29,000, and I thought I'd hit the lottery at that time. So it
Thank
just
you
felt
for
it
that.
just felt like the right thing to do at that time.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Because I think when someone hears it, and maybe kind of clarify that for us. So merchandising
Mhm.
essentially is what people commonly know as like being a buyer, correct?
Correct. So a lot of people, and this is the thing that I think is funny and why I think your, this show is so important because there are so many jobs that people don't even know exist. I legitimately fell into this job. I didn't like wake up one day and you know what I want to do? I want to buy clothes for a living. That was not people do that now. There's actually majors for it now. But at that time, that was not really a thing. So when you tell someone that you were going into retail or going into merchandising, everyone I knew thought I was going to be a manager in a store, that I was going to merchandise the store. And I would have to tell them, think about it this way. How do you think the stuff gets there? There's no like, clothes fairies that just drop the stuff off in the store. Someone makes those decisions. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be the one making those decisions of what you see in a Macy's or whatever. And that is when the light bulb went on for a lot of people. A lot of my family, they were just like, I don't get it. So what store are you going to be working at? I'm not going to be in a store. No, but like, what mall? Not going to be at a mall, So it is very much a career that is your non-traditional career, I would say.
Oh, that's great. That's great background. Yes, so many things have changed. We can't say malls are sort of like non-existent, but yes, many things
Yeah,
have changed, and the fact that there are actually, like you said, majors around unconventional paths now, where you can,
absolutely.
get some, 101 foundational knowledge and understanding
Mhm.
of what you think you might be interested, which is great.
Yep.
Um, so take us back a little bit. So you come out of the executive training program. You
Mhm.
are then sort of what, placed on, you know, over a certain sector in the store to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, the training program kind of taught you everything you needed to know to be a buyer. Once I finished that, I went in, and my first year, I was an assistant buyer in lingerie. So in the sleepwear office. So I did that for about a year. And then I did go, at that time, they did want you to have some understanding of stores. So then my second year, I went and I was a manager in a store. So I managed the lingerie department at the Westside Pavilion, for anyone who knows. Um, that was kind of a crazy job. It was crazy because I was 23. I had 14 people that worked for me, all of which were older than me, and some could have been my grandmother. And I didn't even know how to ring the register. And they just like dropped you in and was like, okay, you're in charge. And I was like, wow. But it very quickly taught me, retail one on one, understanding the customer, how to manage a large team in very quickly. A lot of the leadership skills that I rely on today, I got in that year plus of managing those 14 ladies in the lingerie department. Um, Patience, stick to itiveness, like all of these skills. Like it was literally like boot camp, I felt like, because at that time being in a store, like think day after Thanksgiving back then, it was just insane. But I did that for a year, and then they brought you back, and then you were like a senior assistant, and then kind of went up from there. So I did a couple of different jobs in those first 3 years. And then I did hit kind of uniquely, all of my friends went on and became buyers right away. So, like, my best friends became buyers after about 3 years buying their own area. At about 3 years, I decided I kind of loved the people side of my old job in stores, and I segued into human resources for a couple of years. So I actually was a college recruiter, recruited into the job that I had taken out of college for a couple of
Okay.
years, and then realized 100% people wasn't really me either. I missed the excitement of making the decisions and being a change agent in the business. And so I ended up going back to merchandising, became a buyer, then became a divisional, then became a VP. And um, yeah,
Woo. Um, that is quite the quite the path. And just to reiterate what you just said. So number one, you made a decision, and you're in there at 23, commanding the attention of adults as a woman. Um, um, and so you had to call on sort of many skill sets at the time, including
yeah,
just confidence and courage. Um, so I like to make sure and reiterate from the standpoint of like, look, these things, when people see or meet someone like you can make it sound simple for a sound bite, but we are talking about, 25, 30 years of
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
We're talking about 25, 30 years of discipline. We're talking about a college degree. We're talking about focus. Like nobody's going to give you anything. You're going to have to earn it.
Mhm.
And, the best way to do that is, to your point, is to have a lot of discipline to towards, just towards your goal.
Yeah.
Were
Yeah.
there any sort of like discouraging points? I'm sure there were, but were there
Mhm.
any discouraging points where, during your path, you're like, I thought this was for me. I've been in it, 10 years now. Like, I hate it. I mean, sure, clearly you didn't, but like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I think probably early on, one of the most discouraging things was that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. There were not a lot of Black people there, period. For all the reasons that we just talked about, it's non-traditional career. No one knew about it. It wasn't like just, out there. Um, what does it look like when you're Black and graduating from college, and what does success look like? Safe career choices, like all the things that many of us of this, like, Gen X, generation kind of dealt with when you were coming out of school. This was very atypical. Honestly, I think one of the reasons my parents were even remotely like down with it was because I had already traumatized them saying I wasn't going to go to college and I wanted to be a dancer. So I think they were just happy that I was doing anything that was in the realm of like going to be able to take care of myself as a grown up. But that was discouraging when I got to, when I first walked into the room, I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And once I got in, I identified four people. And, this kind of goes back to me, it goes back to even at UCLA, we, a predominantly white institution. When I was there, you would make it smaller by identifying, maybe you had a study group that was made up of Black and African American people, or, I pledged a Black sorority. You do things to kind of help you feel supported and to build out your tribe and your support system. So I tried to take that approach to the job and quickly saw that that wasn't going to be as easy to do. So I think for me, some of the discouragement at times really just came from being like breaking through those walls and being the first when, I should not be the first of anything. I was in 2004, I got promoted to divisional, so divisional merchandise manager. And I was the
Okay.
first Black female to be promoted to that job. And I was like, that's insane to be the first anything in 2004, right? I should not be the first anything. But that was just kind of part of just the culture of the time, the lack of, there just weren't a lot of us, like there's so many things that played into that. But at the end of the day, I walked into rooms often and didn't see someone that looked like me. And that can, kind of it can have an impact on your feeling of being supported, on your feeling of thinking you can make it. All of these things play like, kind of like low key play at your confidence level.
That's
I
right.
think I was just fortunate that I had some key mentors and some key advocates at the company that just really, really believed in me. And I also did create a little nucleus of friends that were just like ride or die for me no matter what. When I became a buyer, this will tell you, when I became a buyer, I was promoted and I was Probably promoted a little early because, I had done that like HR stint. So I came back. I'd only been back in merchandising for a few months, and I had an advocate who really believed in me, and he promoted me. I was
Okay.
like a little bit on a fake it till you make it kind of vibe. Like I was like, I'm taking this promotion and I will be successful. But my best friend had been promoted to buyer a year prior. And every day after work, after she did her job, she would come over and help me do my job until I knew how
Wow.
to do my job. That's like the level of support that I was able to sort of tap into. I had the skill sets, but I was a little rusty. And she was willing to spend that time to say, okay, think about it this way, do it that way. And I think those were the moments where maybe I doubted myself, but I believed in myself enough to say, I can do this if given the opportunity, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful. And I did feel the weight and the pressure of, you know, being like the first to do some of these things and wanting to show up in a certain way so that it would make it that much easier for people who came behind me. Like I
That's
didn't
right.
feel like I
That's
could
right.
fail. I truly didn't feel like I could fail. Like it was not an option to fail.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, we're not talking about the 1970s. We're talking about
No.
2004, as you said. So,
Mhm.
sometimes we get all of this like feedback and kickback, like, why do we have to take it down to race? And why does it have to?
Right.
Well, because in 2004, you're, seeing the first Black divisional, merchandising
Mhm.
manager at a major department chain, a major
Right.
company, so, May stores. So that's sometimes why we have to bring it up. And because to your earlier point, once again, try walking into any place and surviving and becoming successful there when you look around and you don't see anyone. And if you do, they're typically maybe behind the counter, behind the register.
Yeah.
Those are minimum wage jobs.
Yeah.
Um, so it's seeing yourself, but not in the same executive role way.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think for me, it just felt very important to show up in a certain way and impact the business in a certain way. I think many of us, when you think about Black and African American people in some of these sectors, we most of us were raised with this idea you got to be twice as good. So, to get half as far, if you will. So I just always had this like, pardon my French, kind of balls to the wall attitude about everything I did. Like I just was like, I will be successful no matter what. But it sometimes did feel like pushing a rock uphill when you didn't have that natural support system. And granted, it's work and everyone's like, it shouldn't matter and all this stuff. But those things do matter when you're just trying to, that little extra something that makes you feel like you can do it. Um, but like I said, I was very fortunate. I had some amazing advocates for me all along the way that were not Black. They just saw
Correct.
talent in me and were willing to put in that extra time with me. And so it created a space for me to be as successful as I've been. But I think it also has created a reason for me to feel so committed to giving back, so committed to making a difference, creating, opportunities for other people, be it in retail or in any other way, because I benefited from that. I cannot say I'm here solely because I just am, so amazing. Um, it's amazing and opportunity. What do they say?
That's right.
Stay ready so you don't have to get ready or whatever that saying is, but it's also someone's got
That's
to
right.
like, you got to have that opportunity to like kick the door down or get your foot in it or whatever. And that came from, people kind of like opening those doors for me.
Yeah, quite often, and hopefully this is not a secret to anyone watching or listening. Quite often, we have to have somewhat of a shepherd to take us through certain doors, to say that
Yes,
it's okay and that they are capable and competent. Um, so, unfortunately, that's just factual, and the truth of the matter is that typically someone has either anointed you or said, "Look, get under my wing, and I'm going to guide, mentor you, and move you forward." Um,
absolutely. I mean, the
yeah,
reality is, especially when you get into like corporate America or something of that nature, there's a level of politics that is played. And, it's not just enough to be good enough or even better than good enough. There is often other factors at play that you may not be aware of. So it's important to have someone in your corner that's kind of helping you navigate those things, helping you, make the right choices, get on this committee, be part of this group, take that extra time to do this work. All of those things make a difference. And you may not realize how those building blocks are positioning you in a certain way. But when that opportunity comes up, then there you are. I would say often, once I got into a leadership role and I was myself now in a position to promote others, I used to call it, the PR campaign. I'd have someone who's ready, and I would spend a year making sure they were on the right committees, that they were volunteering for the right roles in the company, that they were getting in front of the right people. So when that job came up and they were like, who should we promote? Their name was on the tip of someone's tongue versus it being, oh, let's look. They're like, no, no, I know exactly. And that's, I think, the piece of it that people don't always like think about is that it's not just enough to be able to do the job. It's also being in the right place at the right time and having made the right connections, the right impressions. All of that also plays a part, especially in corporate America.
yes, yes, great summary. No need to elaborate on that. Great, awesome summary. What do you think differentiates your sort of day to day now than, obviously, like when you started? Like, what's a typical day like now for you at this level?
Gosh, I would say at this level, a typical day for me is to try and figure out how to identify and move obstacles out of my team's way so they can be successful. I spend a lot of time troubleshooting and strategic thinking. So, strategically thinking 5 steps ahead, 10 steps, what's going to happen next month, next season, next year, so that I can try and start to build, the space to be able to move in those directions. But then also on a day to day, I really do spend a lot of time with my team just helping them be successful. What's in their way? How can I make it easier? Let's game it out, that kind of thing. I think is a lot of what I spend my time on. I just, maybe this is the teacher in me. A lot of people that I work with, they're like, it doesn't surprise me that you wanted to be a teacher. I'm a big advocate of coaching, training, and developing. And I am a huge advocate of making it easier for my team to be successful. So I feel like that's like my number one gig. And then the second part of it is a close second is obviously strategically thinking about the business because while they're being tactical, I need to be strategic. So those two things I would say is like kind of an everyday activity for me.
Got it. Got it. Got it. If you're, 22 again, like who does best in this? Who preps the best for a career in this? Like, what would you recommend to someone? They're coming out of college, they're watching this and they're like, gosh, I'd like to be a buyer, but that seems so competitive. What I just watched is she's from Los Angeles, so she's going to have all these natural advantages. She went to UCLA, it's a good school. They're gonna lean in and say that probably, I'm from, X city, and I'm not sure I can. There is a distance, a long distance between me and a career like that. Like, what
Yeah.
is your best advice?
I would say, honestly, nowadays, like I mentioned before, there are actually colleges that have majors. major colleges that have retail management majors. So if you are, one of those people who actually has already identified that this is something they want to do, you could seek those out. And I would absolutely advocate going to a college that has a retail management major in that. We often recruit from those. It's kind of like it's almost like a natural segue, like if you majored in pre-law. We recruit from those schools, we do internships with those schools, like it's kind of like natural. If you are somewhat atypical and end up going to, say, like a UCLA or a USC or something like that, I think it's all about getting a good internship to get you in, say, at a company like mine or a company such as that, to segue into then when you graduate being able to go into that job. But I will say it takes a little more work than me because it's non-traditional. Anything non-traditional, it takes a little bit more work. But interning is probably the best way to get in. And then from there, you can kind of, set your own pace at that point.
Correct. Yeah, I like that. I agree. I think interning, if you can figure out, there's so many strategic ways to network nowadays,
Right.
and you just have to get the right person's attention for the opportunity. Um,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
yeah. Um, so switching subjects just a little bit,
Okay.
you were a part of Fashion Star.
Yes.
Um, I will let you kind of lead into that, describing that, but network opportunity, like how did you get chosen? Seems like it hit at like a great time, but I'd love to hear sort of internally, like how did Caprice, who said, well, put Caprice on?
It was almost like that. So, interestingly enough, at that time in my career, I was over all of women's apparel. And I used to do these things where, like, the LA Times or someone like that would call and say, give us some sound bites, like what's going to be hot, blah, blah, blah. And so I would just give them, little like snippets, pink is going to be hot, gauchos are back, whatever it was. So I had been doing that for a couple of years, maybe a year and a half. And so they reached out. Our head of marketing called me on a weekend and said basically, hey, we're thinking about doing this. She was like such a forward thinker as it came to like marketing, not just your traditional, let's run an ad in a paper kind of thing. So she was like, we're thinking about doing this sort of non-traditional, marketing campaign. Think about it as a cross between Project Runway and American Idol. You know, we think you'd be, great for it, but we're thinking about a couple people from the company. So, just go and, you'll go to this office and answer some questions, whatever. So in my mind, I thought it was just what I'd been doing, which is representing the company in like the paper. And they kept saying it was like a fashion show. So I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to be like a judge at a fashion show, like Miss America kind of thing. Um, all of that is to say I was completely naive and unprepared for what it ended up being. I went to this particular, what I now know was an audition, but I went in just being 100% authentically myself because I had no idea I think if I had known what it was, I probably wouldn't have gotten it because I was just so honest about my thoughts and my feeling about fashion and, my just personality, how I am. Um, and fast forward, they called me a few weeks later, and I was in New York at the time and for work, and they were like, "Hey, you've been chosen." So I was like, "Okay." All the way up until I was literally sitting in that chair for the first time on the NBC studio lot, and they're about to turn the cameras on, I didn't fully understand how big a deal this was, that I was going to be on like network TV. And I think it was,
Network.
again, I think it was that ignorance to it that made me not so nervous. Um, and then it just kind of blew up. It ended up being super successful for us. We identified some amazing talent. It gave me a chance, I think, when I go back to that whole idea of coaching, training, developing, giving people opportunities, whatever, I think I probably had the most impact on people seeing people like me doing a job like this, of anything I've done since. I had so many young Black women and men, just different people come up to me and say, I never even thought this was a career option, but now I do. So it was incredible. It was actually a really amazing experience. Fun fact: I still had to do my day job, so no one was doing my real job while I was doing that job. So how I managed to balance both of them, I don't know. It was just like a perfect, like you said, just a perfect storm of time and ability, I guess, at that time.
Yeah, and that was with Jessica Simpson, and
Yeah,
like you said, it did extremely well. And
yeah,
just to, it's cool that you were able to, move from your corporate position into a little bit of like TV shine and give people like a
yeah,
glimpse of what a buyer looks for, like kind of what we
yeah,
do. And
yeah,
I'm sure it was just encouraging to not only, us, but to everyone to, see that type of role being fulfilled by you. Um, I know we were all so proud and happy for you, and it was just, it just seems like a great, amazing, like life experience, right? That's
it was.
so
I mean,
outside of the corporate box.
absolutely. It was all of those things. And I think it was just, when you write your life, right? And like, everyone has like, all these different moments. It was definitely a highlight, an unexpected highlight, but so much fun. I think I identified, I guess maybe a level of confidence I didn't even know that I had, to be able to do something like that in front of, you know, millions of people every week. That was kind of cool. I also knew, it's funny what makes you think that, you're successful or whatever, but I knew I had arrived when my father-in-law even was so into it. He would call me after the shows and be like, now, why did you pick that? And why did you,
Right.
why did you vote them off? And I was like, okay, this is clearly tapped
Just
into, some sort of like, unique segment of America that I've got my father-in-law, a petroleum
mm,
engineer, is dialed in and cares that I did or did not buy that blouse. That's when I knew that
just
we had like kind of, it was like magic for a moment.
yeah, just tell me you're proud of me. Just say you're proud of me,
Right.
Dad. Just cut to the
Exactly.
chase.
Cut
Just
to
tell me
the
how
chase,
proud of you.
man. Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so let's get to some more kind of fun stuff in terms of a lot of people, when they see these sort of shiny positions, if you will, they assume a certain kind of lifestyle comes with it. And to some extent, it does. Um, can you talk just a little bit about, like, look, you work for a global brand,
Mhm.
and there are benefits that come with that. There are not only conventions and first class flights, but I'm sure
Mhm.
you probably get called to do some things that you didn't think you'd be able to do, hence the fashion store. But even outside
Yeah,
of that.
absolutely. I think, look, when I first started, like I was saying, I was very, very young. My first buying job, I was 25 and I was buying dresses. And I used to go to New York once a month for 2 weeks at a time on company per diem. So, you can just imagine what that looked like. You couldn't tell me nothing, because I was
Right,
like,
right.
this is the life for me and my friends. They would come and stay and whatever. And we were living the life at that time. And it was very, very, very glamorous, I would say. Nowadays, like anything, things have become much more, a lot of those, like, the frivolity, I guess, has gone away to an extent. But what doesn't change is that, we have to be in the right places to be able to identify the trends. So that might mean going to market in New York or going to trade shows. I still travel to quite a few trade shows, and they can be anywhere. I was just in Vegas. Sometimes they're in Chicago, Atlanta, you name it. Some of my counterparts that buy different segments of the business may go to, Europe, to trend spot, so there is that element depending upon what you buy. Um, a lot of vendors are based all over the globe. So we may travel to their factories or their warehouses to be able to identify opportunities. And then I think the other piece of it is just the fact that no 2 days are ever the same. So the fact that we are making business decisions based off of trend, based off of fashion, based off of, to some degree, the fickleness of a customer. If any one of us think about what our shopping patterns are, how often have you gone to a store and I'm going in to buy black shoes and I end up walking out with some sneakers and a mascara? you know that's I didn't buy the black shoes. So that's the, like, mentality that we're making multi-million dollar business decisions against. We're trying to anticipate what a customer may gravitate to and then make decisions off of that. We have to be right more than we're wrong. And as a result of
Mm.
that, it creates a very unique, like, environment daily. And I think that is, kind of some of the, so we call it, like, some of the jazz that happens at the job, is, like, that secret sauce, if you will. But I do travel a lot for my job, and it's awesome. Some people don't like to travel. I would not recommend this job if you don't like to travel. But if you don't mind traveling, and we do still have young moms, people figure it out. We have mothers, we have, people that are very family oriented that figure out how to travel. We accommodate as needed so that people can do what they need to do. There's a lot of flexibility with the role. So, I definitely don't want to leave people with the impression that, you can't have a family, you can't be there for, to take your kids to karate or whatever. People do all those things, and we just make the accommodation so that they can be where they need to be for their job and for their family.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. And I think companies get that at least much more now, that the work life
Yeah,
balance is
yeah,
really important.
absolutely.
Um, the From a compensation standpoint, like, look, there are channels that go into folks' compensation. I'm not going to ask you your specific, but I will ask you, in terms of, you mentioned the $29,000 start. Like, what's sort of the stair step of the range all the way up to, I don't know, VP or higher level?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I will say is that most of our roles are salary plus bonus. And that is kind of industry standard. It varies, but because we are trying to, like, hit certain goals, there is usually a bonus structure incorporated. So you think about total compensation package, if you will. But for base salary for assistants, I believe at this point they're, like, in the 60-ish range, and entry level buyers usually about 120-ish range. As you move up from, and that's not inclusive of bonus. As you move up, you could easily, someone in my role could easily be making mid to high six figures. It really just depends on the company and the structure, but it is a pretty solid career for someone. I think the other thing that is unique that I will share is it's one of the few careers that you don't have to have a secondary degree to be successful. You don't have to have an MBA to do this job. And that is very rare when you think about the business sector nowadays. Typically, price of entry is an MBA. So, to be able to be successful commanding those levels of salary, those levels of leadership, and not necessarily have to have an MBA or a secondary degree in business of any sort, I think it's also, makes it very attractive to people because, do I need to, spend another $300,000 on a degree to then be able to have a career that's making 300,000 or whatever,
Exactly. Exactly. No, thank you for that. Yeah, because I think people. It sounds like you can easily be in the six-figure club by your late 20s,
Yeah.
early 30s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
people, it takes time. We all want to make six figures at 22 coming out of college, but the reality
Absolutely.
is that it takes some time. But in an industry like this specifically, um, that can be, if you're in there and you're swinging for the fence and doing well, it sounds like you can get there pretty quickly, including the bonus structure.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say within the first 3 to 5 years, if three would be like would be kind of fast tracking. But within 3 to 5 years out of college, if you're dedicated and committed and doing all the things, you could easily, hit that benchmark, and soar from there. Really, after you hit buyer, your promotions are largely based off of performance, but also based off of your desire to be a leader. At some point, you have to lead leaders. And, not everybody wants to do that. We have a lot of people that are just career buyers and they love it. They like being that close to the product. They don't want to manage more than an assistant or two. And they just like that vibe. Then there's others, such as myself, that wanted to continue to move up and lead leaders, make bigger strategic decisions for the company and all of that. And then, at that point, it's a little bit of a different skill set because you get a little bit further away from like the day in, day out decision making of, yes, I think I want to buy that pink sweater, but you kind of have a bigger global influence. And then obviously, more responsibility. So salaries increase based on that.
Right, right. Thank you for that again. And so, I guess last, probably just grown woman advice at this point in your life, career, like, you've tracked well, you've put in the work.
Mhm.
What's your grown woman advice?
I guess I would say my grown woman advice is, know your worth early on. I think, if I think back, what I would tell like my out of college 22-year-old self is that they're as lucky to have you as you're lucky to be there. It's like
Mm,
straight up. Like this is not a favor that they gave you this job.
mm,
You didn't, you worked for it. And so that means you deserve to be there. You deserve to be in those rooms. Know your worth. Use your voice. I tell people all the time, use your words, just like you tell kids, like use your words. I'm like, use your words. What do you want? What does it look like for you? Paint a picture. You need to be an advocate for yourself. No one is going to advocate for you as much as you will advocate for yourself. And I think, if I had learned that earlier on, I think some things would have gone down differently. Um, I was fortunate enough to learn it pretty quickly in my career. But even in those early moments, I feel like I just maybe would have felt better about things that happened and choices that I made if I had just really stood in my value earlier on in my career.
got it. Got it. That is excellent. This is beautiful. Wow. Really, really appreciate your time, Caprice.
Yeah.
I hope you guys understand sort of again like what we're doing here at Career Plug. We are featuring guests like Caprice. We need to get this subscriber count up, that's for sure, or my friends will stop coming on and doing me all these favors. But Caprice, again, I really appreciate. I thank you. Just
Absolutely.
invaluable information. how do you even know this stuff? You don't, but you get some access to it through Career Plug. So again, appreciate you. Thank you again for everything. Caprice Willard Bent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, Edwin. Think we got it. That was excellent, Caprice. We got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we do some after interview little snippets, little clips. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Let me let's see. Where is da 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 da? Okay, let's see. Oh, I think I only snipped the I'd have to go on. I think I snipped like the first two paragraphs. And so what is it? The African American what?
We started a Black and African American DE&I network at our company. So
Oh,
like an affinity group, you know.
so I definitely let me yeah, make sure I ask that one. Yes. I got it. Co-launch and led Black African American.
Mhm. Mm.
Okay. I will do my best. So Caprice, one other quick question. I know that you were named one of the most powerful women in finance and retail by the Women of Color magazine, but you also co-launched and led Ross Store's Black African American Community Network. Can you talk a little bit about that? And shout out to Alpha Kappa Alpha, where you are a lifetime member.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. Um, yeah. So, honestly, coming off of the death of George Floyd, a lot of companies saw an opportunity to be a little bit more, I guess, accessible to the people of color in their companies. And so I was given the opportunity to be one of the co-leads to basically start grassroots a community network that really gave a voice and visibility to the Black and African American associates that work for our company at all levels. So from stores all the way up to senior managers. And I have to say, it's probably one of the things that I'm the most proud of for my time at Ross. One, because it was such an important thing to do at a very important time, but also because it gave a voice and visibility to I mentioned before when I started and I felt like I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. And how powerful it was when I did run into them and how I felt supported in a way, whether they were actively supporting me or not. So creating, this network and bringing many of us together in different ways. And, we do all kinds of stuff. Sometimes it's fun, like celebrating Juneteenth. Sometimes it's educational during Black History Month. Sometimes it's networking. Sometimes it's recruiting and retaining talent, because we talked about how, sometimes people that look like us don't even know this as a career option. We are able to plug into all of those different facets at our company. And the best part is our company has given us the room and the bandwidth to do so. So I would say for me personally and professionally is probably it is probably one of the things I'm the most proud of. And every time I meet someone who's like, an assistant buyer who's like bright eyed and just so excited about a career. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that I've met you. And, you can be my mentor. That just delights me, to no end. It just kind of re energizes me because I've been doing this for so long now. Sometimes you need to be reignited. You need to be reminded of how amazing this career really is. And you meet someone fresh out of college who's just like bright eyed and excited. It inspires me. So, I'd say they inspire me as much as I inspire them.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, Edwin, I think that was good in incorporating that. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. That is it. We have taken up an hour and 23 minutes of Caprice's time on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay. I think this is awesome that you're doing this. And I will myself subscribe. I think I still have to. But I think taking the time to like introduce people to careers, atypical careers, is just a really cool white space that you've identified. So I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think so sort of quietly I have a back end platform that I want to plug it into in terms
Mhm.
of it will eventually be sort of like a subscription based system where I'll come back to you, Caprice, and be like, listen,
Mhm.
can you and some of your colleagues dedicate whatever time it is, whether it's once a week, whether it's once a month or
Mhm.
once every 2 months, to
Mhm.
speak with um, individuals that want to know more, individuals and or groups, and so they'll be able to plug into my
Awesome.
platform, and then the companies of course will be able to start creating a pipeline,
Right.
and it'll be like subscription based, but the main thing is to give people an opportunity like past a LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
To plug into people in what they're doing, learn from them, and actually kind of like interact. At first, it was going to be kind of like in person. You visit the person on the job and this and that, but
Mhm.
obviously, like when COVID happened and all that,
Yeah.
going to make it virtual, but yeah, I see like a huge. I I'm gonna blow this up, Caprice. Like, you
Okay.
know,
All
I
right.
really
Well,
appreciate
anything
you
that
being in
you
this early.
need, absolutely. Anything that you need, thank you for thinking of me. Um,
Yes.
and if you guys need anything else, just let me know.
Okay. Thank you again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'll record. Maybe this can be an extra question, or unless you want to rephrase it, Gene. What are I guess, the number of minorities in your career field versus when you started?
Oh, like how many do I see now?
Yes.
I would say that I don't know the exact statistics, I'll be honest, but I definitely see more people in this space that are Black African American than I did when I started, like 1,000%. And there's also more support systems. There's an organization called BRAG, that's Black Retail Action Group, I think is what it stands for. There's, all of these different companies that recruit on campus and they actively seek out people of color. And honestly, not just Black and African American, all the different ethnic groups. If you think about it, I've always said, to me, yeah, it's maybe the right thing to do, just from a like a people sense, but I also think it's a smart business decision. Retail, we are serving communities. And what better way to serve communities than to have people, decision makers, representative of the communities in which you serve? So it makes sense. If you are, Macy's and you're America's department store, you should have representation of America making decisions for your
Mhm.
company. So I think a lot of companies now kind of see that as a competitive advantage to have a more diverse executive rank. But I don't know the exact specifics, except to say that, when I started, I felt like there was literally four of us, and we created what we called the Black Assistant Buyer Caucus, and we met once a month for lunch and talked about our experiences. That's like how minimal it was. And now, we have a whole community network that is made up of, hundreds of people. So I'm definitely moving in
It's
the right
beautiful.
direction. Yeah.
And is there
Beautiful.
any advice you would give to companies who would like to attract more minority representation?
I think the biggest thing is just you got to get out there and recruit in non-traditional ways. It's not enough to just go to the career center on the campus and think you're going to tap into, the top talent across all ethnic groups. A lot of these schools now have, Black business societies, Latino business societies, all these different kind of like student run organizations that have really talented people that could be, super successful at your company. So I guess long story short, I would say a company that wants to have a diverse population, I think they've got to use diverse and alternative recruiting methods to get there.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. Good
Just one more
deal.
question, I
Thank
promise.
you again. I
One more
think we
question?
good
Go ahead.
there. I think I'm
Yeah,
good.
this
I
will be
got
one
it right.
last question.
Okay.
Uh, what advice would you have for any high schoolers? Because I know we're talking to college students, but
Mhm.
well, maybe there's a preparation for a high schooler who may be interested in a fashion career or merchandising career. So how can they prepare before they even go to college?
I think the best thing, if they are in a position to be able to work at all, get a job at a store, go get an actual retail job because, boots on the ground in a store really did help me be super successful with understanding choices that I was making in the buying office and how they would translate at point of sale in a store. So I would say to me, that would be like one really good way. But let's say a student isn't able to, they don't have the time or the ability to do that sort of thing. I think trying to have a very diverse experience in high school, it's the same things that are going to get you into a good college. It's not enough to just be like a 4.5 GPA. What extracurriculars did you do? How are you showing that you can multitask? Multitasking is like critical to the role that I have. I can't just be focused on one thing. I'm always got my finger in multiple pots. So someone who kind of shows that and has developed that skill early on, which I think is something that a high schooler can focus on. I get great grades, but I'm also, I don't know, I play in the band and I'm also doing this other thing and I give back to the community. Those are all things that they could do, like tomorrow.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Build those
absolutely.
skill sets early.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Caprice. Appreciate
Thank you
you.
guys.
Tell Sarah just
Yeah,
said what's up. And
I
thank you
will.
again.
I will. All right.
All
You
right.
guys have a good evening. Okay, take care. Bye.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, sure. Okay.